Hello, I'm Alex Gupta with UATV. Today I'm speaking with Nick Pavlyuk. He is the CEO of equipageservice.com.ua, an internet food delivery business operating throughout Ukraine. Hello, Nick.
Hi,
welcome
Alex.
to UATV.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me about your business.
So we're an online food delivery and food ordering platform. We have over 800 restaurants in 26 cities throughout Ukraine, and we are rapidly expanding into new cities and towns throughout Ukraine. Basically, it's a service that allows you to order food through an app or a mobile version. We also have a call center, and we deliver it 24/7, and we have a lot of cuisine choices, and it's very, very convenient.
So your staff takes the food from the restaurant and then delivers it to the customer?
It really depends. There are two options. So one option is if the restaurant has their own delivery setup. Our role at Equipage is basically like a marketplace. We find them. We are an aggregator. We find them a client, and if they don't have a delivery, we have our own delivery staff that could deliver it to the client.
How is that? Is there a lot of competition in this sector?
There's another major player in Ukraine. There are some of the local players, but we're quite confident to be the market leaders in Ukraine.
So you're in Kiev. Are you in Odessa, Kharkiv?
Yeah, we're in Kiev, Odessa, Kharkiv, Dnipro, Lviv. Most of the big cities in Ukraine, and we're also in the suburbs of Kiev and some smaller towns throughout Ukraine.
When was the company started?
So it was started in 2009 as a spin-off of a taxi company, and then it managed to attract international investment in 2011-2012, and that's when the company started shaping up as an aggregator platform, inspired by most of the key world players in the sector.
Let me ask you about that, about international investors. Was that difficult to get international investors? How did that go about?
I think it's a bit more difficult right now than it used to be. At some point, Ukraine was in the spotlight of international investors. Everybody was talking about Ukraine as the next hot thing. Post-crisis, I think we're getting to that level, but the political crisis in Ukraine had a negative impact, I would say. A lot of investors, especially conservative ones, they tend to stand away from Ukraine because of this political crisis. But I feel like it's getting more and more optimistic. There is more interest to Ukraine, and especially sectors like IT and everything that has to do with IT.
Would you say IT is a great sector for international investors to become involved in here in Ukraine?
I would say because Ukraine, due to its location, it's very central. It's 2 hours difference with London, 1 hour difference with most European cities, and the cost of educated labor and the availability of that labor is very, very good, which makes it an ideal location for business that is export-oriented. Yeah.
Would you say that a lot of international investors are turned off because of the conflict, but also because of corruption?
I would guess so. Also, every year at every investment conference, corruption is a hot topic. Mm-hmm. And although Ukraine shows some progress fighting corruption, but I think there are also a lot of major ongoing scandals that impact the investors in a negative way.
When you were starting this business, was that easy? Was it difficult? How was it starting a business, especially an IT sector business in Ukraine?
Well, actually, I didn't start the business. I came in later with an investor, but I think starting it was quite challenging because it was an unknown at that point, an unknown area for a lot of things. So it definitely took a lot of courage. But right now, I think with the amount of talent, with the amount of good people in working in that area, starting a business is relatively easy. So a lot of startups, a lot of great ideas. You meet talented people every day in Kiev, and making dependent on the size of business. Making something bigger requires a lot more expertise. But I think right now Ukraine is at the stage of private entrepreneurs, people who want to get it done in small teams and through crowdfunding, through their own personal funds, and that's relatively easy right now.
You said something to me earlier which I found interesting. With the crisis, what's happening here in Ukraine, entrepreneurs are getting very creative.
Right.
What did you mean by that?
Well, basically, I heard from an artist friend of mine. He came to visit Kiev, and I asked him what interests you in Kiev, and he says that every crisis encourages people to be creative. They basically have to try harder to be successful. They have to find new ways to be successful, and that's what actually is going on right now in Ukraine. People understand that nobody's going to help them, and they need to figure out a way to be successful. So they come up with this creative startups. They come up with this creative small businesses, and I think it's a very inspiring moment to be aware of.
So that's interesting. Times of despair, when things are bad, people get creative. The entrepreneurial spirit really flows.
Right. I totally agree.
I remember I was speaking to an IT person last year, and he said, in the U.S. and these developed economies, we have a lot of lawyers, investment bankers. We have none of that. We have a lot of IT people, entrepreneurs, because that's the only way they're going to be able to really make a living, is coming up with these creative ideas and these interesting businesses.
Absolutely. If you look, even in the past 2 weeks, there was this hot topic about this startup called Juicero, which is actually shows how much money there is in Silicon Valley and how easy it is to get it. Basically, it's a startup where it attracted like 120 million to create this juice extractor that extracts juice from pre-made packages, and then people figure out they can use their hands to get this, like the same amount of juice. Unfortunately, we don't have that access to easy money. So that's why people value every penny here, and they want to make sure every dollar of investment counts.
What are some tips you would give to people who are involved in the IT sector here? What are some tips you would give them as far as running their business, what to look out for, what to do?
I would just advise them to be more proactive in terms of approaching international markets, not to be shy, because there's always a lot of people who are looking for talent just like them. And although it seems sometimes that we're quite limited in our own dimension, but as soon as you try to go past that dimension and realize there's something bigger than Kiev, something bigger than Ukraine, you start. I think there's a big chance you'll be able to attract international investment.
Have you seen a lot of talent leave the country?
I don't have the exact statistics, but some of my friends left. Some of them had solid educational backgrounds, and they just realized it's not worth to be in a crisis environment. But on the other side, I must admit that a lot of talent, a lot of very talented, well-educated people, they actually took this as a personal challenge to make this country better, and they remained here dealing with all this complicated matters such as corruption, such as political crisis, economic crisis.
What would you like to see happen in the country to help the economy grow?
I would actually like to understand everybody to sort of be in the same boat, to understand that the country needs to be more transparent, that the country needs to be more simple for an investor. Maybe we should concentrate on reforms, on attracting to be able to attract more international investment. And also, I think, the key thing is everybody needs to understand that we're in the same boat, and as long as it's sinking, as long as it's not heading anywhere, nobody will get to where they want to be. And I'd like to see more money and more talent to remain in Ukraine rather than find a nice pad in London and figure out that in 5 years I'll move there.
When Uber came into the country, was that big Was that a big moment?
Yes, it was. I mean, it was very interesting. I personally, I enjoy Uber throughout the world, but I think our market is quite different from, let's say, U.S. market. There was never a problem to get a taxi via phone or on the street. Uber certainly made it a lot easier by having a great app. And Yandex Taxi came right after, which basically shows that this is the right direction to go to internet taxi ordering via an app. I think it's generally also it inspires Ukrainians because it makes us feel that we are closer to the Western world, closer to progress, and I mean, we're still at 3G internet speeds, you know, where the rest of the world is already at LTE. So I think all this progress, especially in this progressive areas, means a lot and inspires Ukrainians.
Thank you so much. Is there any last words? Anything else?
I think we covered everything. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex.
I'm Alex Gupta with UATV. I was speaking with Nick Pavlyuk.